Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, as always, is our engineer, our man behind the scenes that makes everything happen for us, and without him, we would not be having this podcast, our friend Dan the Man, behind the scene, behind the curtain. Say hello to the people, Dan.
How's everybody doing out there today? Welcome to the show.
Glad you're here, Dan. Well, you may have noticed we have another guest in the podcast studio, a very dear friend of mine. I'm so glad he could come in and share his story with us today. His name is Steve, but he is known in very congenial, friendly terms as the Sarge. So welcome to the podcast, Sarge. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, Christopher, and thank you, Dan, for having me in your home, letting me be a part of this. This is a part of my program that I am proud to be a part of. And it's a real gift to be able to have something you feel like is worth giving away instead of laying there in a ditch and whining. Thank you.
And it's an honor for me because when I came back to Louisville in '97 and you helped me so much with all the tapes, he would send me speaker tapes and say, listen to this guy, this guy's good. Listen to this guy, this guy's good. Every week he had another one. And it dramatically raised the level of my recovery. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right, so we always start with the basics on the podcast. Probably the most important question you could ask one of us. What is your sobriety date, Steve?
Thank you for asking. My sobriety date is November the 24th of 1994.
All right, 94, which makes you
30 years sober.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great freaking work. That is awesome. Triple decade sobriety. That's awesome. All right, so we start with some basics, like tell us where you grew up, tell us about your family, brothers and sisters, and what was going on for you in your environment, maybe growing up as a kid.
Well, we may need another piece of paper.
We'll be here a while.
My love for talking and my story about what you just asked me has a lot of pieces. I grew up. I was born in New Albany, just right here on this side of the river, in 1946, March the 21st, and I am 79 years old.
Juice.
Who would have thought? I was born here, and my mother and father lived in Salem, Indiana at the time, and they took me from here to there, and I spent my first 18 years of my life in Salem, Indiana. Salem, Indiana was a little town of 5,000 people. It had 7 gin mills and 2 liquor stores for 5,000 people, and they all did well.
Tells you a lot about what you did in Salem.
Yes. We didn't have a town drunk. We were a little drunk town. And it seemed to work for us. And it introduced me to a method and a way of life that was kind of based around drinking and alcohol in your life. Mm-hmm. I went to 12 years of school there and graduated from high school. And I got to tell you how I kind of got to that point. I didn't like to go to church. I just didn't want to have it. I got tired of hearing I was going to burn in hell, and that was clear. I didn't need to hear that every week over and over again. Yeah. And I noticed my dad didn't go to church. He had to work. He was on call. So I made a deal with my mother at 6 that if I got a job, I didn't have to go to church.
At 6.
At 6.
Good man.
And they
I like your logic.
They all thought, yeah, well, he's full of crap again. Don't worry about it. That'll never happen. So I conned them into getting me a shoe shine kit for Christmas. And at 8 years old, I went to work shining shoes.
Wow.
At Kenny Humphrey's barbershop. And I didn't get rich there, and I didn't earn my first $1 million. But I did stay there long enough to figure out a way to get a paper out when I was 10. And I got that paper out and worked that paper out for a year. And that is work. I rode my bicycle 5 miles every morning before I went to school. Me and the dog got the papers delivered and yada, yada, yada. And then I got a chance to go to work in a restaurant, a little greasy spoon. And I went to work in that restaurant when I was 11, and I worked there for a year. place called the Dinner Bell. It's still there. And I washed dishes before I went to junior high school. And my dream came true. I was making 35 cents an hour washing dishes. And that wasn't too bad a pay for what I was doing back then. But there was a filling station right across the street from our house where I lived. And the guy over there got to know us. I mean, we were neighbors and friends and what have you. And he hired me over there to work part-time at his filling station for $1 an hour.
Wow, upgrade.
Yes, so I'm 12 years old, and I've gone to work for one of the biggest alcoholics in town, and I'm making $1 an hour. And I just slid right into my slot with the drinking and everything else at 12 years old. Played sports, and did a lot of things, went hunting, and had a pretty balanced life, but there was always alcohol at 12.
Yeah, that's early. Let me fill in some blanks here. So with the family, do you think getting out of the house and working so much was just trying to get out of the family house, or you were just very industrious, or you felt like money was the way out, or what was
I think escaping from the family.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's really true for a lot of us.
Oh, yeah. I turned my back on my family. I turned my back on myself. I turned my back on God at 6. Hey, I cut that deal. I mean, so that wasn't a factor in my life. But I never knew how to have a relationship with anybody because of that time frame in my life. I talk to people when I'm working with them about the causes and conditions before they started drinking. I like to do that because that's important to me. But I'm glad that when I got to AA, this all started to make some sense and started to come together. And I realized that how could I have a relationship with somebody else? I didn't have one with me.
Right.
I didn't know how to have a relationship. What it comes down to, in my case, is I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. I didn't know how to process a feeling. I didn't know how to be accountable. I was accountable, and I was a real hard worker. And they would steal me from the filling station to go put up hay and do things like that. Salem was a little farm town. And I always had plenty of work to do, and people liked for me to work for them. But there wasn't any emotional accountability there. There was just a monetary
You go to work,
business.
You get your paycheck. You're a man, you're paying your bills, and you
That's
have
it.
the right to get tore up on Friday and Saturday night
Sure.
at the VA or wherever.
Yeah.
So, but that's so common for most of us, that sort of disconnect socially and being wrapped up in ourselves, and we don't know how to express our feelings. We don't know what a feeling is. We don't know how to have a relationship in terms of when somebody else is talking, we get all anxious, like, what am I supposed to say? And we're so busy thinking about our own noise in the head, we're not even listening to the person. So again, that's what AA, and for me too, the 12 steps gave me those tools to be able to be there for other people.
I'm not sure I turned my back on everybody. I think I was seeking for a place to go. I don't think I was running away from what I had as much as seeking someplace else to go. I wanted more then. Hello, there's that word, more.
Well, yes, and there's that word, restless.
Yes.
You know, there must be something better going on around the block. Let me scoot up.
Gotta be.
So you were making lots of money, so that was good.
Yep.
And then at 12, you're sliding in with the adults. The older crowd who's drinking, and they probably weren't the best male role models for
I never wanted to be a kid.
You just wanted to grow up fast.
I started smoking when I was 5.
Okay. 5 years old.
5 years old. I would.
What,
my
you
dad.
Spanking our gang? You just
Well, I'll tell you how it happened, and it was real, and I did it. My dad and my mom smoked, and my dad would go to work with his brother. They were electric contractors. They were, to relate to my age, they were converting homes in the farm communities that didn't have electricity.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so here's your history book coming out. But anyhow, Andy would come pick up my dad, and Andy smoked these little short Camels, non-filtered. There were no filters in cigarettes,
Yeah.
and he would flip his cigarette butt out the window as they drove off, and I would look around and see where my mother was, and I'd run out there and finish up that cigarette for him. And I got just as high as a kite off of that little cigarette at 5 years old. And I'd stagger around in the yard and fall down and laugh and giggle. And it was so much fun to be dizzy. I relate to that today, and it's not fun to be dizzy anymore.
Well, I've heard other people, like there was a woman speaker one time who told a story that she had one of those spin toys as a kid that she would just get on and go to town on, and then she'd get up, walk crazy around the yard, and throw up. And her parents would say, honey, you don't need to do that to that extreme, but she wanted that altered state. She wanted that feeling.
The altered state. There it is. Yes, it is.
Isn't that funny? And it's funny in the sense that that's that genetic component that just makes us automatically uncomfortable in our skin, and we're looking for something to fix it,
Sure.
So this is exciting. I get to learn all this cool stuff about you. So did you make it through high school okay, or did you have run-ins as a teenager with the law and any of that fun? Johnny Law, Barney Fife, any of that stuff in that small town?
Well, yeah. See, Salem, Indiana has a real famous half-mile high-banked asphalt racetrack that I grew up on, and I was a gearhead, and I just loved motors and things. And
I've been there many times.
And I grew up there, and
what'd you race? What kind of cars were you working on?
Oh, I Vespa scooters and Husky
Vespas,
Cushman Husky scooters,
wow.
and see, I had this money coming in so I could buy these things, and I bought the scooters. I had one of each scooter, and I like to ride them a lot. And I'd get off in the country and ride around, and the police would find me and bring me home. That's the only encounter I had with them, because they knew who I was and they liked me, and they would take care of me because I pumped gas. I pumped their gas.
There you go. Got to know.
And I served them their breakfast. And I started networking awfully early in life.
That's what you were doing, sir. I recognize
it.
myself in you.
Benefits.
I never in my life understood the people who would do bad things right in front of the teacher. I would always do it behind the scenes, and then I would work the teacher, like Eddie Haskell would work Mrs. Cleaver, and say, your hair looks nice today, and they'd never get in trouble. Never get in trouble. Just be nice.
And networking, you'd have these people in your life.
Yeah, exactly. Don't burn any bridges. I like that.
And the people didn't pay the paper boy. They paid their dues, too.
Uh-huh.
I let them know that wasn't good. I didn't like that.
You sick your dog on him.
We didn't get our paper. Why you didn't pay me? There's a clause here.
So I always like to ask this question of my patients when I'm going through their story. If I had gone to that 16 to 18-year-old kid and I had said, look, son, I have a magic wand that I can wave, and I can give you whatever career path you want with your dreams, and you'll be successful at it, what would you have liked to done back then? Maybe race cars, or what would you have liked to done back then?
Yes, I would like to have been a race car driver.
And what branch of that? Stock car? Or?
Well, then it was the front engine sprint car type cars.
Sprints and midgets.
Well, they were bigger. The full sprints.
The big ones.
Yeah, the big sprints. I remember serving A.J. Foyt hamburgers when I was in my 5 or 6 year old range at the racetrack.
You must have been starstruck.
My dad was not so much. I was busy.
Yeah.
I was working.
Yeah.
My dad was on the volunteer fire department. The volunteer fire department, the racetrack, donated that concession business to the fire department. And I would go out there and help them and work. That was 56 and 57 during that time period. No, it was even before that. That was 51, 52. And I would have probably wanted to do that more than anything else, because I love to go fast.
I do.
Still
too.
do. My God, I'm bad. I'm terrible.
I do too.
I have a logical approach to that, though.
What?
The most unsafe place I'll be all day is behind the wheel of my car. So if I can limit that time any way possible, my chances of being around a little longer increase.
I've come to the conclusion, like many things in life, they say you have a gene for spicy things. Some people like it, some people don't. I think you either have a gene for going fast or you don't. Dan does not have that gene.
No, he had.
I love torque. I love torque.
Oh, yeah.
I loved we pressed back in my seat. Our good friend Shane Dogg, who was on the podcast recently, has access to a Corvette for free. That he did some nice thing for some lady. She lets him drive her Corvette, and he thrust me back in the seat a couple of weeks ago, and I was like giggling like a schoolgirl.
I like to explain the street version of torque to people.
Tell me.
The street version of torque is you've got a piston inside of a metal block. And the bigger that piston is, and the more it weighs, and the faster you can make that weight go, the more power you can put out the other end.
Makes sense.
So that's the torque. That's where the torque comes
That
from.
makes sense.
And I just like to go fast. I wanted to win. And I like to slide sideways. That's fun. I enjoy that. And I got to know the local drivers, and I'd go to the Mitchell track, and I'd go to some of the other small tracks around when I could find a ride and get over there.
And yet there's a question in my head before we get out of the high school years, and you've got to be honest with me here. Really? You were never pulling tricks and shit in the car, and you weren't drunk at that time? Or did you?
Oh, I was drunk all the time. But first of all, I didn't have a car.
Okay.
I didn't have
You didn't
a
have
car.
access. Okay, that probably saved your life, sir.
That probably did. But I also had another problem in school that was never discovered, and I never told anybody till I got sober in AA. I couldn't read. I could not read a page in a book and tell you anything that was on it. I could not comprehend anything. And medical tests after that, and now since I've had some other medical things come up, a lot of those things, put this on my pituitary, on my thyroid glands, and those kinds of things. And I had an overactive testosterone level. And Burns used to talk about this a lot. He had this, talked about his premature ejaculation and how his sex life was always screwed up until he finally got a handle on this. But that's another thing that contributes to wanting to go fast all the time.
I see.
And being such a hard driver.
So much of what we have is hormonal like that. They're discovering more about that every day.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
So would they call that a form of dyslexia, or you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but they didn't identify it as anything. I managed to get around it somehow. I could score well enough on written test and multiple choice tests and things, and they just wanted to get me at. They wanted me to graduate because
Passing you through.
yeah, teachers didn't make a lot of money then, and I think some of them thought I made more than they did, and it was kind of a competitive thing there. But they just let me slide.
Okay.
They just did.
That's unfortunate. We do have a lot of brothers and sisters in the program who have learning disabilities and or ADD, ADHD, and they talk about. See, I have this theory of we're damaged in so many ways, but we have that inner brokenness, that empty hole inside. We're not enough. We don't feel like we fit in. I feel uncomfortable in my own skin, and invariably, Steve, as I'm talking to my patients about any of their stories, they all have an element where they were made to feel even more different. And sometimes it's bullying, sometimes it was trauma, sometimes sexual abuse and physical abuse, or sometimes a learning disability. But there's almost always another added layer of insult on top of I already felt uncomfortable enough. I don't need to feel more uncomfortable or different, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
right. Whatever the mechanical aspect of that is, creates quite a distraction from your mental focus.
Yeah, absolutely, because you want to hide it away.
I don't want anybody to know I can't read.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to read.
You know what? It's very similar to having a drinking issue you're hiding.
Yeah.
It can come out, and you're trying to make sure it doesn't show itself.
Well, you think about it all the time.
Yeah, I think about it all the time.
That's a distraction.
Plan
If you're
ahead.
thinking about something that isn't what's in front of you, and today it's a distraction. And I was never at the right place, right time to get the good deal and have the good things happen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And until I got sober, I never did have a good run of that. Because I was always geeked up,
Sure.
headed the wrong way at the wrong time,
Mm-hmm.
the wrong place with the wrong people.
So we graduated from high school, and did you have any aspirations of continuing education, or are you ready to go to work, or maybe go straight to the military? What was going
Well,
on?
it's Vietnam time.
Okay, by then, okay.
It was Vietnam time. I
Were you
graduated
60
in 1964.
64. Whoa, yeah.
It's right in the middle of Vietnam time, and I surely didn't want to go to Vietnam. That just didn't have a good ring to it. And my sister was dating a fellow from Seymour, and he was going to Vincennes University, and my grades weren't anything to brag about. But he said, "Oh, we can get you in, no problem." So I went to Vincennes University. I went to a junior college and avoided the draft for 3 years by doing that. And there's a whole lot in between here and there now. The same thing happened to me at Vincennes that happened to me in high school. I still couldn't read. And I could pass the test. And the drinking really picked up.
Yeah, I'll bet.
The drinking
Pressures,
really picked
right?
up.
Pressures of higher ed, there's a lot of pressure to it, depending on...
I just like to stay drunk.
Well, that's...
I like to not study or go to class.
You weren't a fraternity boy.
and just drunk.
right?
No, I wasn't a fraternity boy. I was
didn't
not a
think so.
fraternity boy.
I didn't think so.
Not unless you were at the bar I was in.
Okay.
Because, and I'm not 21 yet. I'm still using fake IDs and getting by with it. And I finally ended up. I was dating a girl in Vincennes where I went to school, and her father had a mobile home and RV dealership. And we concocted a way for me to work for him and get credit for that in school as a work-study program.
Oh,
Pretty
interesting.
simple.
Yeah.
And off I went
To make more money.
to make more money,
Smart man.
make more money,
Had lots of money in that field.
and drink more.
And drink more.
Always drink more. And that kind of blew up after 3 years of the junior college thing. And I flunked out of school finally after 3 years. And the guy I was working with in Vincennes went to Lexington and took a job there and called me from down there and says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, not much. I flunked out of school and I don't want to get drafted." And he says, "Come to Lexington. We have an RV lot over here and we want you to manage it." And I said, I'm 21. Good, come on down. So I went to Lexington to manage an RV lot there. And I was there for about 3 or 4 months. Really ramped up the drinking. I was in charge of the drinking, and by God, we drank. And
Can I break that down for a second? So did you go through the phases of, all right, I won't drink first thing in the morning, and then
No.
that gets broke, and then I won't drink at work, and then that gets broke, or were you just 24
I
hours?
never had a phase of I'm not going to drink or I'm going to try to
You
quit.
just were going to drink. It's just...
I drank.
You drank, okay.
I was a drinker.
Breakfast of
Am
champions.
I the wrong group? We're
No,
the
you're,
right
you're in
group.
the right group. You're in the right
Yeah,
group. But
yeah.
what I'm pointing out is your disease was pretty advanced.
Yes, but I didn't
already
fight
at
it.
that young age. Yeah,
I didn't. Oh my God, yes,
Yeah.
I was in.
yeah.
And I finally got drafted from the Lexington location and went into the Army.
Wow. How was that decision made? Because I had no other options? Because you were trying to avoid...
You don't, there's no options when you're drafted.
Oh, you were drafted. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's no options.
Your letter got called, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't. And I knew who did it in Salem, too, see, because that's where I was from. And that's where my registration was for the draft. And I knew who was behind that.
Really?
Yeah, and
That sounds like some Mr. Potter shit from It's a Wonderful Life movie.
It's
so
a
you
real-
called your
it's a
card
real
on
issue.
purpose as a payback? Wow, that's a hell of a payback.
Well, and in her defense, the lady on the draft board that did that, she was just doing her job.
Okay.
She just had to do what she had to do.
Sure.
I don't think they singled me out or anything like that, but I got drafted and a lot of other people didn't. Of course, a lot of people got married and wish they'd have gotten drafted. And
You served your time, but they're serving time for life, right? So So you're in the Army now, and what fort did you go to?
Oh, I went to Fort Knox for my basic training, and I went in there. Of course, I was older. I was 21, and most of these kids were 17 and 18 years old.
Oh, yeah, fresh
So they
faced.
said, "Oh, look, he's had college and he's older. We'll put him in charge." So they made me the platoon guide, what they call a platoon guide, and I was the recruit leader, and it was more drinking and learn to march, learn to do the Army things, wore the green clothes, had the cute haircut. And then I went to AIT in Fort Ord, California. Now, I got drafted and showed up in November of 67.
Is that advanced infantry training? Is that what AIT is?
That's after basic, yes. AT, yeah. Advanced Infantry Training, AIT, yeah.
Okay.
And they made me a platoon guide there again. No, they didn't. They made me a squad leader. They had somebody else. But they kept picking on my age, and they kept picking on the fact that I'd had some college, and they'd put me in leadership positions. And so I finished AIT, and they sent me to Fort Gordon, Georgia. And I had no idea what for. And I got there, and I was assigned to a place called Camp Crockett, kind of on the edge of the base. And what going on there was training for officers if they were captured.
Oh, wow.
Interrogation.
Geez.
Oh, yeah. And then I was there for a few months and drank heavily. Oh, my God, this horrible drinking. And
At any time throughout up till now, had anybody called you out on that in the military? It's just like, we'll give him a pass as long as he does what he's supposed to do.
No.
Yeah.
No. I fit right in.
Yeah. Okay.
I fit right in. They gave you a club to go to stay drunk. They issued you cigarettes.
True.
I mean, come on.
And it was cheaper on base.
the
All the
mili-
soldiers have told me that it's cheaper to buy on base.
Oh yeah, but the military, the whole drive behind the military changed drastically with the Vietnam War. It really did, because the people in Vietnam were stoned and doped up and drunk and went through their military careers just like I did the same thing here. But the next thing that came down for me, though, when I was at Camp Crockett, was I got orders to go to DI school, drill instructor school.
Oh, wow.
So they sent me to DI school in Anniston, Alabama, where they train the women. So there's lots of women around. But I was drunk. I was busy being a drill sergeant. And I got the most valuable training of my life there and didn't take advantage of it till I sobered up and couldn't really put it together then. But after I got sobered up, it started to show up. The leadership skills that they taught me, I was finally able to have a conscious contact with and develop. One key thing was the most effective leaders are the people that set the best example. And I believe that to this day. And I still have my creases in line, and I still dress like I was a drill sergeant, and I take pride in that. And it's been a part of what's got me to where I am today. Just cleaning up your act. Just don't be what you look like.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You know, no matter how bad one of my patients' story is, I always say, was there anyone, though, that was an angel of sorts that was in your life that guided you in the right way? And I'm wondering, as you tell this story, was there one guy in particular that guided you during that training that you remember and say he made the difference to really teach me some of that?
No, I was drunk.
Yeah, too drunk to appreciate it.
I was too drunk to have that in my life. And there was more than one.
Okay.
There were a lot more than one. I mean, I learned unity in there. I learned to work with people. I learned that the guy in the foxhole next to you is somebody you ought to know something about.
Mm-hmm.
I learned those things in there, and I didn't really have it narrowed down to what you're talking
Which is
about.
kind of the spiritual approach of AA. It's not about me. It's about us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. The Army's very good about that.
Yeah. Because
Bill was an Army guy.
Yep. People die if it's not about us. It can't be about you.
Yeah.
So I always have this picture, and pardon me for my amateur attempt here. Were you more Sergeant Carter, Gomer Power, or were you like that hard ass in the movie?
I'm glad you asked.
Metal Gear Jacket.
I'm glad you
Full
asked.
Metal Jacket.
Yeah, I just got to know.
I'm glad you asked. I was a hard driver. I got that sprint car racing driving thing and put it into the Army with me. And I drove those people, and I sat them down, and I talked to them when I first was introduced to a new cycle of troops. And I explained to them that it wasn't going to be easy, and they weren't going to like it, and I was going to kick the shit out of them. And it just had to be, because the only chance they had to come back from where they were going to go alive was to take as much with them as I could provide them with. Let's do it together. And I was a good drill sergeant. I had good troops, buddy. My people performed, and they answered up. And they did their jobs, and they cleaned their rifles, and they shined their boots, and they ironed their pants, and they could shoot their rifles. And they weren't a bunch of goof-offs.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, though, Steve, we do that as sponsors. And, you know, you're being that example, maybe as a father to some of them they never had, a good male role model that someone never had. And that's what we do as sponsors. And it had to break your heart sometimes to send some of them off knowing that, you know, a lot of them aren't going to come back.
I was drunk.
That's how you just drank through it.
I was drunk.
Yeah.
You know, I got another cycle coming in. Okay.
Yeah, stay busy.
And you just kind of...
Stay busy.
I think about that, though, today.
Sure.
And I think... There's a few of them I remember that I trained when I went through, and I want to know they're okay. I want to know they didn't die over there, but it's hard to do to find out. Mm-hmm. The Army keeping records is about like the Boy Scouts or something. I mean, there's a lot of these clubs and groups around that we admire, but when it gets into the business side of them, they're not so hot.
Mm. All right, so let's continue on in the
Yes.
march through Steve's history. When did you chapter out, or what happened with you leaving the military?
Okay, I did my time. I was in Germany, and I found something else in Germany that kind of fits in with my story.
Drinking?
I found drugs.
Drinking. Oh, here we go. All right.
I found the drugs.
Talking my stuff.
Yeah. Oh, we're talking fun here. We're talking opium-aided hash.
With the Germans.
Oh,
Look
yeah.
at you, your turncoat.
Well, I was scared. I was always frightened of drugs. Scared to death. I was afraid. Well, I don't want to get all hooked on something.
Sure, I
Alcoholic
understand.
for years now. Don't want to get hooked on something. And I was on KP over there in Germany. In other words, I was on kitchen police. And there was a guy in New Jersey who was with me, and we went up to take a nap during the afternoon one day. And the cook's room had some extra beds in it. You could go up there and lay down if you wanted to. So we did. And I woke up and I said, my God, I had some wild-ass dreams. I've never seen anything like that. And he says, yeah, me too. And he says, I know why. And I says, what do you mean? The cooks were smoking dope back there in the corner. I said, really? Well, that was fun. I want to do some more of that.
There you go.
And we went to Frankfurt and went to the disco place, and went to the guy with the big the trench coat on that just in the summertime here he is walking around with a trench coat on, and you let him know you'd like to buy some dope, and he'd just open up his trench coat, and it was all merchandise, sir. You pick out the chunk you wanted, negotiated the price, and off you go.
Wow. And compared to alcohol, what did it do differently that you experienced? Because that's always a curious question I have for people.
It was a different high,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't come with so much falling around and laying around.
It's
and
not
the
as sloppy. Yep.
Thought process was altogether different. I ended up finding speed over there too, which was a lot of fun.
Here we go.
We had these over-the-counter things called Rosamonts, so we could just go to the drugstore and buy them Whew, I'm glad we don't have them here.
Huh.
I'd still be on them, I think.
It's interesting. Maybe that's left over from Hitler's giving amphetamine to his troops.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Now
sure.
they're selling it in the pharmacy in the 70s.
But I caught myself in a card game over there one night, all stoked up, and we were playing around the clock because we couldn't sleep. And I could use words in conversation that I'd never used before. And hell, I could spell them.
Oh, interesting.
And it changed. It affected my output and what was in my head that I'd been exposed to that had never come out. It's I didn't believe it myself, and some of the people pointed at us says, "Did you say that stout? Yeah, that's not like you. Okay." It's your turn, bid.
Is
We're playing
that,
cards.
is that element with people with ADD who they give them Ritalin and it chills them out and they're able to think clear?
Yes.
Okay, I see. So that was like an awakening for you that this works.
Well, that was a wake-up call for me. I was going the other way. The Ritalin, I think, calms you down, slows you down. Well, this speeded me up even past where I was.
But you could think clearly.
Well, I could consciously think. I could have a conscious contact and didn't know it.
I see.
Didn't know what a conscious contact was yet. I didn't know what that was till I got to AA. I'd never put those two words together. Conscious contact. Shut up. I don't want it. Put that in the God column and get away from me.
At any time as you're going through, you've been through a lot of different adventures in a lot of different places. At any time, did you have a concept of what an alcoholic was or even know about AA?
It's a good question, and we had a guy in Salem named Bill Goen that was quite an AA guy. Nice guy, insurance agent. Went to school with these kids who were drunks and alcoholics. And he sobered up and he did well. But I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to drink, fine. You're not going to want to hang around with us. That's okay. But I don't disrespect you. My father put an element of respect for everybody in my life. He didn't like this racist thing at all. He didn't want any part of that, and he didn't want us to be a part of that. He says, that stuff doesn't matter. That's not us. We don't judge people by the way they dress, the way they look, or what color they are, or what they drive, or anything else. We keep it really with the finished product.
Mm-hmm. You know what's cool about that, though? I could almost guarantee a lot of that understanding of what he gave you came to you in recovery when we start to see our parents from a more healing perspective and not stop being mad at them and start to appreciate they may have done a couple of good things for us. I know that's hard for this.
Well, I didn't talk about my family much. I've got a brother and a sister. I'm the oldest of three, and my mother and father and my family were, my brother and I, we didn't know what to do with our sister. She was always winning the Fair Queen contest and having straight A's, and she didn't fit in with us.
Mm-hmm.
But she was a sweetheart, and she understood us, and she never condemned us, and we're still close to this day.
Did your brother drink?
My brother went through a drinking period and smoking dope, and my brother's still a little out there. I wish I could find some reason to get him exposed to what I've been exposed to in AA.
Mm-hmm.
And he got pretty deep into religion at different times, and my sister did too. And I respect that. I don't have a problem with that. I belong to a church. I go to church now with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I can learn from those people.
Right, but I know what you mean. When you have someone close to you and you know how good it can be with these tools in your life, and you want so much to give it to the people you love. You want so much to give it to them. But if they don't want it, you have to respect that. That's your path. You can choose whatever you want.
I mean, I was your leader. You know, my brother, I was your leader. You grew up with me. I gave you alcohol. I gave you drugs. I gave you all these other things that were so wonderful. No wonder you don't want this.
He's suspicious. He's got his eye on you.
Yeah, you're not getting me again with that stuff, Steve.
All right, I like to get to the point where we're getting that point of change. So if we can condense to get up to, because you know how our stories become. Yeah, and then I got drunk again. Then I got drunk again. But when did the really bad period happen before the turnaround? Let's get into some of that.
Well, yes, okay, there were different things involved in that. We need to get me back to work for a little while because I spent 45 years in the RV business.
Okay.
And
Pretty profitable, right?
Depending on
the economy.
At times, yeah. It was up and down all over the place, just like everybody else. But the thing about the RV business was it was a renegade industry. Okay? Basically, it came from carnival people and people that lived on the go all the time and not to settle down drive behind it. It was just kind of freelance. And I fit right in. Mm-hmm. I fit right in. Here's an expense account. Here is a new vehicle. Here's a territory. Go out and entertain them. Get them to buy. And God did look out for me.
They gave you all the tools and they said, go out and hustle, make money, and you're good at that. So it was a perfect fit.
I learned to be one hell of a carnival barker working shows in the RV and the mobile home business.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed working those shows 16 hours a day, working on concrete, standing there. Come over here. Come over here. Let me show you why you came to the show. This is new. That's new. You don't have any of these. We got this deal and that deal. Little girl, quit sticking straw up that donkey's. Ask me no questions. I'll tell you no lies. Get over here. We're going to buy something.
How could you resist?
I mean, you take the drill sergeant
I'll
training.
sign. I buy.
Yeah, and you take the drill sergeant training that I had to go with in the early days, I was the cutting edge of telemarketing.
Yeah.
I worked for a company called Coachman. They had a parts division, and we sold mobile home and RV parts through there. And they set me on a phone, and they said we'd have rooms full of people on phones. We had telephone bills in the 70s that were $250,000 a month.
Moly.
Okay, for all these people on the phones trying to sell these parts and stuff. And it all worked. I mean, it was all drunk and it was all fun and wasn't accountable and nobody cared.
So here we are, right at the precipice and then this period happened. So let's get into the dark times, Steve.
Let's get me into AA here.
Right, right before the miracle. I want to hear some of your suffering. Tell me your
well, I didn't suffer. I didn't have. I had the hangovers.
Wait, I have a list. Do you have DUI?
I had one when I was 19 on my 19th birthday. One.
Okay. How about wrecked cars?
3.
How about court cases?
No.
Ex-wives?
Nope. Not till no. I've been married 3 times. I say no, but that was later.
Health issues?
No.
Liver issues? No.
I've had a whole lot more health issues since I sobered up.
Don't tell them that. They'll say, there's no reason to get drunk then. It's because you were pickled.
Used me up.
Well, you're a very lucky man. If God was looking out for you, you had guardian angels.
He was with me all the time.
Yeah.
And he took better care of me than I did.
That's the way I feel about it when I was out there.
I like to say that prayer of mine in the morning that I wrote, and then get off of my knees and get up, and me and God take on the day together. And He's never not with me. I had my mother when I was about 5. Got mad at my dad one morning and looked right at me in our kitchen and said, "Stevie, I'm going to walk out that door one day and I'm never coming back." And I carried that with me with this abandonment issue for a long, long time in my life and was terrified of being alone. Just terrified. And when I finally got here and surrendered to the fact that there could be a God, and he could be with me all the time, and he could help me with a lot of things that aren't even mine that I worry about and drive myself crazy with and make my life a lot easier. Then it all started to come together in AA.
So how did you get there?
Okay, that's a story in itself.
Good.
November the 24th of 1994 was Thanksgiving Day. And I was working up in the Elkhart South Bend area and living up there, and I came home for Thanksgiving. And the day before Thanksgiving, a friend of mine called me up who had divorced her husband, who was a friend of mine, and she was a friend of mine. And she says, "What are you going to do tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Sit around with the family, I guess." And she said, "Well, I've been going to AA meetings, and I'm going to go to an AA meeting tomorrow. Do you want to come with me?" And I thought, anything's better than sitting around with the damn family. I mean, give me a break. And I'd like to see you. Yes, that's a good idea. So we came to Louisville, and I thought, well, this is an hour of my life I'll never get back. And we went in there, and I sat down, and...
Token Club? Token Club?
Oh, Token 3. Oh, yes,
Okay.
Absolutely. And I was sitting there, and there was something that I liked about those people. There was an element that I found out later of honesty and openness and willingness, and that they had gone through what I'd gone through. And you got to realize now, you have to realize at this point in time, my age and where I was and what was going on, I really didn't have any place to go. I was so empty. I quit drinking in 91 when my dad died. And this is 94. I pity people who haven't drank enough to quit. If you drink enough alcohol long enough, if you're anything like me, you'll quit. And then you'll get to be lost and empty, and you'll be the same butthead you were when you drank. And it's a miserable, horrible place to be for 3.5 years. And I went to that meeting, and I could see the smile on people's faces, and I could feel it. For the first time in my life, I could take something I could see, something I was a part of, and I could feel it, and it felt good, and I didn't drink, and I didn't smoke, and I didn't cuss, and I didn't do any of these things, and it just openly and honestly felt good, but I didn't understand that yet. But I could feel it. I felt it enough that I wanted more. And I've gone to meetings since then for 30 years. I've gone to 10 meetings a week for 30 years, minimum. I go to a lot more than that because I go online now. But this has been much more beneficial to me to obsess about than all those other things. After 45 years, I walked away from the RV industry, and I've never looked back. Boy, those were hard drinkers. We had a golf outing that we went to in Traverse City, Michigan, that I went to for 17 years in a row. And they would they would take over the Holiday Inn right on the bay up there, and they would rent a golf course for us. And there were about 100 of us, and from all over the country, and we'd go out there just get blind drunk and hit golf balls all over the place and have a big scramble, and then we'd come back and eat and drink and play cards and gamble, and it was a mess. But I don't miss any of that. I don't want to go back up there again. Most of the people that I went with and done that with are dead and gone anyhow. But that's what I did as a drinker before I got in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got in that meeting for the first time, and I had a better feeling than I never had doing that stuff without doing that stuff. And I went back to South Bend and I started going to meetings. And I was still traveling at the time. And I went to meetings in Ohio and Michigan and Illinois and Iowa, and came down here and went to meetings. And any place I go and whatever I do in conjunction with that, if I have time, I'll find a way to go to a meeting if I can, because it's so damn much fun.
You've always known you as a meeting maker. You're always out there. You know how people will say in their story that they didn't know how to put their finger on it, but they felt like when they came to their first meeting, they had come home. Like this was where they belonged. This is where they're supposed to be. And for your old life, it sounds like you had burned out so much of that. As far as you did everything possibly could do, you got the T-shirt, and and the Buddhists would say your old self was ready to die to the new life, to the new self. Okay. And God bless you for having that blessing. You know, many people don't have that.
I never called it home because I didn't like home.
Okay, fair enough. Family?
I didn't.
Not family.
It was me.
No. I mean, what would you call it then? My people, my.
Well, I had a huge family.
Yeah, but I mean, when you came to AA, if you wouldn't call it home, what was that feeling that you felt?
Good.
It feels good. It feels safe.
It feels. I didn't know what to call it.
Okay.
I didn't know what to call it, but I wanted more.
Okay, you could see we had something.
Yeah, there was something here. You made me feel like I'd never felt before, and
like people genuinely caring the way they look you in the eye and say, "You really okay? You doing all right?" You know.
What it comes down to in the end? Honesty.
Yeah.
Honesty. I was a world-class liar too.
You were a salesperson.
I was a world-class liar. I'd find a way to make it work and make you want it.
Uh-huh.
Make you want it. A big change in my sales career came one day when I decided I was going to quit trying to sell people things, and I would help them buy things.
Yeah, be of service.
Just change the wording a little bit, and get a different attitude. Attitude, big factor.
So I want to hear about your process choosing your first AA teacher, which will be your sponsor. How did you find your sponsor? Who did you work with? How was that?
I was in South Bend. Mishawaka is the city.
Was that the rough part of South Bend? Because I hear South Bend, I'm like, ooh, it's rough up there.
There's rough parts of South Bend. Mm-hmm. They're right next to the Studebaker Mansion, as a matter of fact.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's a sad situation up there. When I was up there, and I guess it's still true today, they've still got buildings downtown sitting there empty from Studebaker.
Wow.
That they can't adjust the tax rate on to get somebody to go down there and put businesses in them. I mean, it's not a good good community. I lived in Mishawaka.
Okay.
I didn't live in South Bend.
Okay.
But Mishawaka was different. We had Uniroyal.
Oh, okay.
And we had, of course, the river came through the town there. The St. Joe River flowed through there, and South Bend is on the south bend of the river.
Gotcha.
It comes through there.
Notre Dame is up in that area.
Notre Dame, another thing.
So tell me about your first sponsor. How'd you get with this guy?
Oh, I really didn't know how to do a sponsor, and I was doing okay. I wasn't working the steps, and I still wasn't reading the big book very well yet because I hadn't mastered that reading thing very well. But I love to go to the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I love to go to the meetings, and there was a guy up there, a construction worker, named Mitch. And I finally, after about 6 months, I guess, decided I'd ask Mitch to be my sponsor.
And what was it that drew you to Mitch?
Because he seemed to work the program and know about the steps. I wanted to know about the steps.
Good.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And he was a quiet guy, and he was just a nice guy. I felt safe around him.
Interesting.
And I picked Mitch.
I don't know why I would have it in my head that you would have your first sponsor would be a drill sergeant, but given your dad and given what you grew up with in the military, I could see like, hey, this is different. This guy's calm. He's safe to be with.
Well, it's like my current sponsor that I've had for 27 years now.
Uh-huh.
He's the most humble guy I know. And if there's one thing I needed, it was to learn how to be humble.
Wow, that's cool.
That's the first word I looked up when I came in here. Humble. And I found a definition in there. You know, most of the time I would look up a word and there'd be more confusing definitions of it than the definition I had without looking it up. And there was a short definition of humble in there that I carry with me today, and it was to learn. Humble yourself to learn. Get off of your high horse. Get rid of that arrogant, hard-driving, cocky, I got all this money, you can't stop me attitude, and get teachable. Because I didn't know how to learn.
Yeah.
I do that with my people today. A lot of my people. We work on how to learn. Learning is the most fun thing I've ever done in my life. And I really like it. We work on the basic life skills that I got from a guy named Bob Olson.
I love Bob.
Who was in AA. And
I was just writing about him in the book of his story of being a collector for the mob in Chicago.
Oh, yeah. He did that. Well, he taught, he had a job in the prison system teaching prisoners life skills. I thought that might work with drunks, too.
Yeah.
Teach them how to listen, teach them how to focus, and teach them how to have a conscious contact.
So you had a relationship with Bob?
No, tapes.
Oh, the tapes, yeah.
The tapes.
So, but back me up here. So that's I did the math. That's 1998 roughly that you got your current sponsor. That 4-year period in between. What drew you to that sponsor then? You said the humility piece, but could you put your finger on that?
My current sponsor?
Yeah. What made you choose him?
Oh, he was the most humble guy I've ever met in my life.
From the beginning, that's what attracted you.
Oh yeah, I wanted what he had.
Okay. And it's really interesting to me how we take different angles, because that word humility can mean many different things to help people get over your ego. And for me, what I like is when Bill says I had to get right-sized. Because I always had this, not intentionally, we're just wired this way, that everybody's looking at you, everybody's talking about you, and they're not. But you have this ego thing going on, like, I'm paranoid, like they're all talking about me. And it's like, dude, just get right-sized. When you come in the room, you don't have to be the one coming in the room. Like everybody's going to turn and look, oh, Christopher's here, we can start the meeting. Why don't you be one among many?
Yes.
That's right-sized to me. And I try to sit in the meetings and carry that spirit. Listening, I look people directly in the eye when they're talking at the podium, not looking around the room at everybody else, and not have to speak every week. Those are those little things you do. Just be right-sized.
I had another drive, too. I wanted in control of everything all the time because I didn't want you to know I couldn't read.
Mm.
My mother didn't know I couldn't read. There wasn't anybody on the planet that knew that I couldn't read. And I was terrified that would come out one day, and I didn't have an answer for it.
So the day had to come when you told your sponsor, and how would that go? What did he say?
Oh, that went okay. Because by then
he said it's fine.
I learned. I was sitting in Don Major's basement
Uh-huh.
after I was about 12 or 13 years sober and realized that I could read.
Oh, okay.
And that I'd gotten teachable.
Very cool.
And it was, there wasn't anybody else around. I didn't share with anybody, but it made me just the happiest I've ever been in my life. It really did. And it really started to make life fun.
That is so awesome. And staying with your sponsor that long tells me that he's still teaching you to this day. Because that's there's no reason to make a change in sponsorship if your sponsor is also on a growth path and working on his own stuff and showing you new stuff in his behaviors and his stuff. And God bless you for finding that connection, because that becomes your teacher for life,
Yes.
And what a wonderful gift we have, this thing called recovery, is it not?
It is. I'm living in the best years of my life.
It feels like that, doesn't it?
Oh, it is. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I've been married 3 times. My first wife and I were married for 6 months, and I was the huge problem, and I'm glad we set her free somehow. God was certainly in charge of that. And my second wife was a good lady. I married her and was with her for 5 years. I married her after I'd gotten sober, and we did okay. We just had a problem with blending families, and it just got to where she rented the house next door to where I live now when we got a divorce, and she was my neighbor, and we were always the best of friends. That never changed, but our marriage wasn't working for us, so we got out of it. Now, moving on to the current situation. I decided, well, I got online on 1996. I went online on a computer. Bought me a computer, got online, AOL.
You got mail. You got mail. You got mail.
Oh, yeah. I got mail. Yes, sir. And they had a chat room in there called Friends of Bill W. So I've been going to meetings online since 1996.
Wow, very cool.
Zoom has nothing on me as far as I'm concerned. And we had good meetings back then. And they were open and they were honest. And nobody made up any silly ass rules or came up with stuff. And we would get to know each other and meet each other. I went out of town. I was still traveling. And I'd meet them. I'd go to their house and meet them face to face. And we'd go to a meeting there. And it was wonderful. It was. But I like my online. I am comfortable meeting anybody anytime. I've never met a stranger.
You're very friendly. You're very personable too. And you're always reaching your hand out to the newcomer.
Oh, I like it.
But you were on the verge of telling us how you met your third wife.
Oh! I met her online.
Okay.
I met her in a dating site online, and she was in the Philippines. And I went to the Philippines to meet her.
Very cool.
And we met and came back here. We've been married 10 years. And probably the marriage is hard. Now, let's back up. Living with anybody else and sharing living space is hard, marriage or otherwise.
Agreed.
And marriage gets kind of a bum rap because everything gets blamed on it to a degree, but there are things that take place in marriage that aren't about the marriage thing that make it so hard. And after 10 years, we have stopped wanting to kill each other, I think. The language thing was a problem. They go, oh, I speak English. They don't speak English. They know the difference between a bus and a sandwich. But they don't they don't know how to use our tenses and our adverbs and our adjectives. And whenever you're living with somebody and sharing living space, and they don't drive and you do all of their driving, and you have to coordinate when, where, and how, what's going to happen, and who's going to be involved, without those adverbs and adjectives, it gets real difficult.
Absolutely.
Very difficult. I understand that, and I'm not claiming that all by itself. I think this change we're going through in our society now with all these people coming in who don't speak English, by the way, I think this communication factor is very, very undervalued. And it's making it very hard for us. Yes, Wednesday, was it? I sat for 6 hours in the DMV trying to get my driver's license. Well, 6 hours to sit in one chair and not eat and sit in a room full of people that don't speak English. Right around the corner from your house makes you take a good look at yourself.
You got to work your program, bro.
And I sat there, and I had my program. And my program's what got me through it.
It gets us through a lot of things, man. I'm telling you. These are miracle tools. We can both agree on that.
Oh,
miracle
my
tools.
goodness.
That you didn't go postal, you didn't cause any trouble, all that
And
stuff.
I didn't cause any trouble.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell them what I really thought of them. I didn't tell them.
Yeah.
You know, when I walked through that airport coming home during Vietnam, coming from Germany, nevertheless, and the people spit on me, this makes me feel worse for longer.
That happened to you? That's so
yeah.
awful.
Yeah, well, they spit on us.
That's so awful.
Yeah, I carried that around for a long time. And I found out what was driving behind it and said, no more of that for me. And I didn't know where I was going. It's like my family. I didn't know what I was running from. I was just trying to find whatever it was.
Exactly.
I was searching. I didn't run away from God. I just was looking for something else. I didn't know what I was looking for.
So, I did want to say, to me, hearing your story with your wife and going through those struggles, I see the positive, Steve. I see that you really love this woman and you were willing to stick in there and work it out. And that's freaking awesome. That's something to be celebrated.
We put up with each other.
Sure.
We did.
That's what love is.
And
putting up with each other.
We realized that we didn't have any place else to go. It's kind of like AA.
We got to make this work.
We're stuck with this, and we're gonna make it work.
All right. So before we get you off here, there's a couple of questions I wanted to ask you in your experience. The higher power issue is so difficult because I had a ton of religious baggage, and I always tell my newcomers, we've got to deal with your blocks. Bill Wilson makes that very clear in the big book that it was blocked in him, and he talks about pomp, worship of other things, and all that jazz. But it's our teachers and the things we heard we didn't like. And so when people bring up spirituality, they automatically bring up their computer banks, and that's what they relate that they think we're talking about. But the fact that matter what we're really talking about is you get to choose your own path and find your own spirituality that works for you. How was your journey with some of that?
My journey was long and lonely. And I didn't know what I was looking for, and the magic words came from somebody in South Bend. My first meetings in Alcoholics Anonymous, when I went back home after I'd been to my first meeting, were on the campus of Notre Dame at 6:30 and 8 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday morning.
Must have been beautiful.
And they set me down one day up there, and they said, Steve, we understand that you have a God problem. And I said, no, I don't. I don't have one. No problem. And they said, well, that's what we mean. And they said, we don't care if you have one or not. All we want you to do is admit that if there is one, it isn't you. And then you'll be on the right track and you'll be able to go where you want to go in here, because we're not trying to sell you God or anything else. But quit playing God, because it hasn't worked and it put you here.
Wow, those are some solid old timers.
Oh, yeah. And here again, there's this honesty and truth coming out, just banging me right over the head. I had to admit that they were right.
I was playing God.
I was playing God, and I didn't even know it.
Most people don't know it. That you present that statement to them and their ego is going to automatically reject it, and they don't even understand what it means. Playing God means I'm going to sit here and moan about what this other person is going through because they're sick and I think it's so horrible, but I'm presuming that I know what's best for them and I know God's plan, and maybe God has them exactly where they're supposed to be. That's stepping out of my hula hoop. I'm trying to fix the world, fix man's control things. And we do it in every area of our lives.
And it was their fault.
Because we're control freaks. If you grew up in a dysfunctional household, you are a control freak.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it was their fault.
Yeah, I know. Happiness is knowing who to blame, Steve.
Absolutely.
But I thought that was a solid talk. I mean, simple, straightforward. Just admit it's not you. It's very simple.
Yes. I work well getting down to the real simplicity, the simplest possible view of anything I can connect with today. This conscious contact thing is something else I like to work with too. I try to teach people about listening and about focusing. Focusing is the key. If you can focus, then it helps you to be able to listen. And if you can focus, it helps you to have a conscious contact. But if you can't focus, if you're watching the birds out the window and the kid's building the snowman when you should be looking at the blackboard, I developed a way to practice focusing because I was an athlete. And I realized that an athlete goes to practice and then they play the game. They go to practice and then they play the game. I thought, must be something to that. Well, this focusing thing, what I do now, what I did to create a situation where I could focus, this has a lot to do with me being able to read and everything else too. I learned to practice focusing in the morning. I get on my knees and say my prayer and leave the TV on and make myself block it out and focus on my prayer. Change. we are people who have formed some horrible bad habits between the ages of 3 and 14, and some of them are just there to stay and just wrecked us our entire lives, and we didn't know how to change them or identify them or surrender to them or anything else. But once we do that, then we had to learn a way to change them. And that took practicing for me. So I still do that today. And it reminds me to stay focused and pick what you want to focus on and make sure it's what you should be focusing on and block everything else out. It's doable. We can do that.
Mm-hmm.
We can definitely do that. And it changed my life. It allowed me to be able to read because I could focus on the words in front of me instead of the words I couldn't understand or pronounce or spell or do anything else with. I mean, that whole words and written stuff was just nightmare to me.
I love the way you described that. And I also wanted to ask you about finding the right fit for us at certain times in our life for a home group, right? Because our needs change as we go through sobriety journeys. And you've had different home groups. I met you at a home group on Thursday nights when I first came back to Louisville. That was a great old-timer group. But then you started coming to our meeting, and I was so happy to see you. And you've been faithful ever since. You're there every Tuesday. And so what do you like? I mean, what do you like about the community? Explain about community and how you need these guys in your life. You need to feel part of a group, you know?
Yes. Let's go back to my abandonment issue.
Please, because it's common in most people's story. They have that in some form.
A home group was a solution to my abandonment issue.
Okay.
It gave me a place to go.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me a place to be. And I have had my current home group now for 28 years. The Real Living Sober meeting at 7 o'clock on Wednesday nights. And it's where the hell is it meet now? We've had to move 2 or 3 times, but it's at the Crescent Hill Methodist Church, I believe it is, on the corner of Peterson, where the old speaker meeting used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think it's St. Mark's. It's
St. something.
Crestwood, I think. Yeah,
corner of Peterson, the brick road.
But it's not on Frankfort Avenue.
Oh, it's not all the way there.
It's right off of
St.
it on
Mark's is
Peterson.
the no name group.
At the corner.
But I think this is the dark church. It's a darker church close to there.
Yeah.
But so you've been going there, and
I've been getting. But I'll tell you what attracts me to it more than anything is it's the Real Living Sober book, and we read out a Living Sober book. We read a chapter every week, and we discuss that chapter. And the Real Living Sober book was a big bridge for me to get to the big book.
Okay.
Because it was a smaller book.
And more understandable.
More understandable. Told you to eat when you're supposed to eat. Sleep when you're supposed to sleep. Be accountable. I mean, these things are in the Living Sober book. And I still am glad I go there every week.
That's a great tool, though, because I'm going to keep that in my computer. If I get a guy who's former military and maybe didn't get much education, but he knows how to do practical stuff. Like if you tell him do this task and do this, that makes sense. Okay, I can do that. Yeah. But the big book has a lot of theory in it, and that's hard to follow. Without a sponsor.
It's hard for me. Well, I mean, I can't make excuses about the big book because I was a problem. The big book wasn't a problem.
It's a problem. It's such a problem that they just came out with a new version for easy to read. But I love what Bill wrote. I think it's genius. I think it's the work of God. But without a sponsor to translate it, a newcomer just goes in one ear.
I had to learn how to do that.
And
I learned how to do that in Don Major's meetings more than probably any place.
He was such a great teacher. I love Don.
He was. He took me through my 6th step like nobody else would have. And he made me look up every word I said in the dictionary. And
like every one of your character defects?
No, every word I said. The first word he made me look up was do, D-O. Look it up.
He didn't make you write it down too, did he?
Look it up. I'll tell you. I got to tell you the do story. I thought, why in the world would I have to look up the word do? It probably doesn't even have a definition. And I went in there, and there's a whole half of a...
Yeah. For the smallest words, they sometimes have the biggest definitions.
Definitions, all of hairdo and this do and do-wop, and it's all in there. And I thought, my God. So I learned again in this humbling learning process, I don't look up words to find out the meaning, my meaning. I look up to find what else it means. Because if I'm having trouble with a word that somebody is using to try to communicate with me, they may be using a different definition of the same word that I'm off track with.
Very true.
To get their point across. That's just an English thing that probably is true in other languages too, but we have a lot of...
English has many nuances that are difficult to master for people that never learn the language. It's true.
Yes, it's true.
All right, so the last thing I want to touch on is you are a great support to newcomers, and you do your expert help. You're always great to reach out your hand and help people. Do you want to talk about sponsorship and the joy that's brought to your life and
Absolutely.
service work and all that stuff?
Absolutely.
Because again, I come in this program like service work, so like give it to the poor. That's all I knew. I didn't realize. Oh, you mean being involved in other people's lives, and they can call you and maybe disrupt your pleasures so that you can be there for them. You have to sacrifice. It takes self-sacrifice, as Bill says in the big book.
And I love it. I love every minute of it. The first thing I'll say about that is look up the word.
That's great. So
look up the word sponsor.
Oh, okay.
And see what it means.
Can we do it right now?
Yeah, you can do it. Look up the word
the listeners might want to know. You go ahead.
Look up the word sponsor. But I have my own understanding and definition of how I sponsor people. I don't sponsor people for life. I sponsor people to get them through the steps and to get them comfortable with the program and to develop the wants and needs that I feel like I had to have to get where I am today. I don't sponsor people to make them work my program. I sponsor them to make them work their program and what works for them and falls in line with our 12 steps and our traditions and what we hear in our meetings. And I sponsor them to teach them that change isn't the end of the world. Did you find it?
Yeah, I did. It's at first, every single definition as if we're not sick enough in this country. But every single definition that came up was monetary, like sponsoring somebody financially or something.
Oh, yeah.
But this one's pretty good. It says sponsoring someone generally means providing support, backing, or I like this part, or responsibility for them.
That's what I come over to.
Yeah, I like
who
that one.
assumes responsibility for some other person or thing.
It also involves vouching for them, for their actions or their character. Yeah, but I like taking responsibility for them because when they're new, they're counting on you to steer them right,
Accountability.
Yeah.
I sponsor them like this, and I get them through the steps. And the other thing I do is I almost always answer the phone when somebody calls me.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing I do is I don't tell them they have to call me. They don't have to call me. They are not here to report to me. They are here to work on their program. And we'll work on theirs together. So, no news is good news. If you got some bad news, call me. I will answer the phone. And what we will do is we will talk about whatever this issue is together and try to learn the best next right thing for you to take or action or thing to do in conjunction with that to limit the damage.
I relate to that.
Limit the damage.
Let's stop.
Don't make it worse.
Let's stop the bleeding first.
It's bad enough.
Don't make it worse. Don't get a divorce over this. You just had a fight with your wife. Come on now.
It's bad enough. And there's a way to do that. There's got to be a way to do that. And this comes with being kind and respectful and thinking of other people.
Yeah.
But I've sponsored a lot of people that go back and they drink again and they have successful lives. I just want your life to get better. Mm-hmm. I want you to have a shot at a different life that you didn't know existed. because that's what happened to me. And that's all you have to do.
I like what the big book says, that we're not approaching him from any spiritual hilltop.
Nope.
We're not trying to lecture, and or what does it say? We're not forcing any agenda on him. It's just lay the simple toolkit at his feet. He either wants it or he doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of like training people to go to Vietnam.
Very similar, because this is battle every day.
You need all I can give you.
I love military. I think you know this. I was working the PTSD group for a year with the soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. I learned so much, and I was so honored. They rode me hard to accept me, and then once I got in, they were cool with me.
Yeah.
And they taught me so much. But I'm a fan of using military language when it comes to fighting this disease. And I was telling my patients today that one of the things the soldiers taught me is every day, you check your defenses. You walk the perimeter. Are there any gaps or anything broken? Are your guns working? Is this shit? And I'm teaching them they need to do this daily maintenance on their disease when you're just starting out, because relapse is more likely than not in the first 90 days. That's where it all happens, scientifically, statistically. So
I wanted a morning prayer, and I couldn't find a morning prayer.
I was hoping you'd share it with us. Do you want to share the one you wrote?
I will. Yeah. And I wrote my own morning prayer. And as I was writing, and I thought, who am I to tell God what to do? Who am I to tell God about anything? My morning prayer is me thanking God and being grateful. And it goes like this. God, thank you for giving me another day, and thank you for keeping me sober yesterday. Thank you for being with all my family and friends. Thank you for being with all those sick, suffering, lost, and in pain. Thank you for your patience, your understanding, your acceptance, and your unconditional love. Thank you for your signs and signals. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for all the wonderful angels you put in my life. Thank you for Rose. Thank you for Shorty. Thank you for Lady. Thank you for Toto and DJ. Thank you for Boots. Thank you for Tippy and Maynard, Kipper and Oscar. God, I love you. Thy will be done. Amen. Let's go.
That's beautiful.
Those are my dogs.
That's beautiful. And this is from the
my
guy.
My wife and my dogs.
And this is from the guy who had trouble reading. It's a beautiful prayer, Steve. It's a very beautiful prayer.
Thank you very much.
You know, we've had a great relationship over the years, and I don't know, sometimes when you say things at meetings, you know, everybody takes a minute to catch up with you. I've always been able to read you for some reason. When you say something, I'm like, yep, I get what he's saying. Sometimes it's a little convoluted what he's saying, but I get what he's saying.
Yeah. Well, and you have to be here for a while. New people don't.
And I've always known
I was
this,
new at one time.
Right, and I've always known this about you, dude. Even though you come off a little hard at times, your heart is solid. Your heart is in the right place. You want to help people, and you want to make a difference. And
I
be
know
you're trying to be supportive.
I know how to love today. I learned how to love in AA.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you'd run out of love. I thought love was a material
like
thing.
a commodity, yeah.
I really did. I said, well, I better not give this to tell that person I love them. I'm going to run out of this, and then what will I tell them? So I better not do that. And that's been a real asset for me.
Mm-hmm. I was just talking to one of our brothers on the way here, and we were talking about the response when people are in trouble, and that we don't shoot our wounded, and that we care for each other, and that we show love. And that's one of the comments I hear from my patients, the male ones, that always touches my heart the most about our home group is they'll say, I've never seen men love each other like that. Because men, where I come from, don't do that. They don't do that. They keep their guards up, and they talk about football or whatever, you know.
We don't know how.
Yeah, you're right. I had to learn that myself.
I get upset with people that tell me, oh, I was sponsored this guy and he drank, and I got rid of his ass. And, what? Why?
He was going to drink. He's an
I didn't
alcoholic,
drink.
Right?
I didn't drink.
It's everybody has their own methods of sponsorship.
Well,
and I think we need them all.
What burns me on that one is, well, my time's more valuable than that. No, it's not. No,
Yeah, that's dangerous. Yeah, if you lose sight that you need to go on a nasty, smelly 12-step call every now and then and get your butt humbled, you're going to be in trouble someday. Yeah, I agree with you on that 100%. Not worth my time. That's funny.
Well, I've heard people say that.
I know. But again, because our group, again, Bill Wilson said this. He said we're a bunch of individualist anarchists, and there's no reason we should all get along. But because the principles, and we're all trying the best we can, somehow it all works, and I believe we need every voice in there. Even the guys I completely disagree with, that guy is going to be a fit for this guy that I can't be for that guy because I'm a different guy. But let the crusty old-timer sponsor that guy because that's the guy that relates to you. I don't like the crusty old-timer, but it works for that guy. So I fully appreciate that we need all voices in terms of different forms of sponsorship.
I do too. I really do.
Yeah.
Don and I used to go over. We'd get... because we weren't exactly a fit. But we sure loved each other and we cared about each other. And we learned a lot from each other. Again, the learning thing. But he was on this courteous thing. He was on the courteous kick. And I said, well, what's courteous? Well, not in the military manual. I don't see that word.
What was his take on it? Curious. I'd like to learn.
Well, he got on a real kick of kind of blowing smoke up people and pumping them up from that side. And I just told him, I said, Don, that's all well and good, but it's not real. It's not real. They're going to get their feelings hurt. They're not going to like everything that happens to them out here. Why don't we work on getting them ready for it and toughen them up a little bit so that they don't fall apart and end up in a
well, you said at the beginning of this podcast, Steve, and I firmly believe that's our fundamental core principle is honesty. And my job as a sponsor, I was taught, is to tell my man the truth.
Yes.
Because nobody else will. His family is afraid to. Other people are afraid of his bullshit. But a sponsor has to be unafraid of your wrath to look you in the eyes occasionally and say, buddy, you're kind of fucking up here. You need to tighten up the ship.
You got a big piece of spinach on your tooth.
Yeah, exactly. And who else is going to tell you? Not just your sponsor is going to tell you that. And it's a good thing, everybody. Trust me. You don't want to have spinach on your teeth, especially when you're on camera. Anything else you'd like to say to anybody new out there, anybody who might be struggling still with alcohol? And it's such a wonderful gift we're giving. And all of us, I think, you're in this camp, don't feel like we deserve it. We get so much out of the program. And we were like, what did I do to deserve this, man? You know?
I hear this a lot from people in here, and I agree with it. Alcoholics Anonymous is so much more than about alcohol. Alcohol, when you stop drinking, is where you start the benefits from Alcoholics Anonymous. That's not where you graduate. You don't graduate when you quit drinking. You graduate when you learn to have a life and live a life. If your life was based on alcohol like a lot of ours was. Because it just didn't work for us. That's why we're here. I had to learn to let go of it. I had to identify it. I had to get familiar with it. I had to recognize it when it came along and I slid off in the ditch again. I had to do that. And I learned to do that in here. And I can do it to this day. Thank you all for that. Thank you for letting me be a part of this today. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
I loved having you. And let me add one piece on that. To me, this is a program for living, as Bill says it in the book. And I wish I had been given this manual on day one. Because this is, you can say I'm a pumper on this shit. Yes, I'm all about letting everybody know about it. But if I had been taught, if you use these principles in life, you'll always come out smelling like a rose. Even when all the shit storms falling down, you'll be taken care of. My old sponsor, Bob J., told me that all the time. We can't guarantee that it's going to be okay because look out there. It's not always okay. But we can guarantee if you work these tools, you'll be okay. And I've worked them through recessions. I've worked them through crises of many kinds, medical, whatever. And you come out and it all works out. And you're like, wow, how did that happen? It's the magic of working a spiritually principled life. And religions are not teaching this.
No.
We have this in 12-step programs. So, and it's not just AA. It's Al-Anon, it's Narcotics Anonymous, it's Overeaters Anonymous. Go to whichever brand is your problem and there's people sitting there waiting to love on you, just the way you were received the first day you went to the meeting.
And you'll find out that we've all got the same problem. Us.
Yeah. Well, I say us and my teachers. They gave me bad tools, man. I had bad tools to grow up. And those drugs in Salem didn't do you any favors, buddy.
Oh, no. But I can abuse anything.
True. We have evidence in Frankfurt of that.
Oh, yes.
Well, anyway,
Sure
Steve,
do.
it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming by. Dan, would you like to say just a word or two to Steve here? You've known Steve over the years, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Sure.
A little story. You know, the same guy who tried to talk me for months and months and months to go to the Spiritual Underground meeting.
George.
He got me in there. And I came to the Spiritual Underground meeting, and then another couple of weeks later, he said, "Hey, man, there's a meeting at 6 o'clock at the same church right before this meeting. We can go to them both." And that meeting was called Emotional Sobriety. And I walked in there and met Steve.
Yes.
And Steve did what Steve does and wrapped his arms around me, and we've been fast friends from that point on. We hit it right off. I respected him immediately. He was giving me solid advice out of the gates, and I was just a broken down newcomer. And I always will hold you in my heart in a very special place as a result of that. And our friendship continues, and I expect it to continue. I love you to death, man, and you have been one of those special people in my life and in my recovery, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If I tell you I love you, I do.
Yeah, you do.
Me too.
It's not blowing smoke. I know how to. I didn't know how to love somebody.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being with us, Steve. Absolute pleasure. I cannot tell you enough. And we always like to end the podcast with the Serenity Prayer. But real quick, before we do that, if you'd like to comment below, please do. And send us a little email, if you would, at iam12, the word recovery, at gmail.com. That's iam12, word recovery, at gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you. And if we can help you in any way on your journey of recovery, we will reach out and help you. So, Dan and Steve, if you'd like to join me with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it, and you die if you don't.
Amen. It's a prayer.
You're going to die if you don't.
That's right.
Love y'all. Come back, see us.
I'm going to die anyhow.